You've been taught to believe in separations, that the world of your thoughts lives here in your head, while the world of matter unfolds out there, detached, indifferent. But the deeper you look, the more that old assumption unravels. Modern physics stumbled into a truth so unsettling, even Einstein called it spooky. Particles, those tiny units you once imagined as billiard balls, don't stay locked into one neat position. They slip, flicker, and sometimes appear to exist in two places at once. And stranger still, when two particles become entangled, they behave like a single system. Touch one, and the other moves instantly, no matter the distance between them. That's not science fiction. That's experiment after experiment confirming the impossible. Researchers fired particles apart, light years away in principle, and still, their responses were locked together in perfect synchronicity. Space and time stopped acting like barriers. The universe revealed a hidden wiring, an invisible thread that makes everything more connected than we ever dared to admit. Pause and let that sink in, because if matter itself carries this secret code of connection, what does that say about you? You're not separate from the fabric of existence. You're a living node inside it, a signal traveling across the infinite web. Every thought you release is not a closed loop bouncing around in your skull. It's a ripple pulsing outward into that web, just as real as sound waves or light. Now picture it. Imagine a vast ocean stretching without edges. On its surface, two boats drift miles apart. To the eye, they're isolated, but beneath, currents run deep. Push against one boat and the other shifts in response, not because of proximity, but because they share the same hidden waterway. Entanglement works like that, only instead of boats, it's particles, and instead of water, it's the very structure of reality itself. And here's where it moves from abstract theory to personal revelation. If the universe is stitched together by these invisible threads, then your consciousness is not a solitary island. Your subconscious, your emotional currents, your very awareness may be part of this entangled system. That means your thoughts might not just influence your next choice or your mood, they could be synchronizing with futures you haven't yet lived. You've probably felt it in subtle ways already. Those moments when you thought of someone only to have them call. When you felt a door closing in life only to find another swinging open, as if orchestrated. Science describes entanglement in laboratories, but you experience its shadow in daily synchronicities. Coincidence becomes too thin a word. What you're touching is the edge of a much larger riddle. Maybe consciousness itself is entangled across time, reaching beyond the limits of the present moment. To some, that idea feels impossible. The brain is meat and electricity, they say. Thoughts can't leave the cage of neurons. But pause again. Even the brain produces electromagnetic waves that escape the skull and extend outward. Even observation itself alters reality at the smallest scale. If waves and observation already stretch beyond boundaries, is it really so far-fetched that your awareness participates in this grand web too? Here's the pivot. Once you accept entanglement as more than a physics quirk, you begin to see it as a mirror. The universe is whispering. Nothing is separate. Your choices ripple farther than you know. Your inner world and outer world are linked, not by vague hope, but by the very architecture of creation. So the next question is not whether entanglement exists, it's what you'll do with it. Will you keep treating your thoughts as harmless daydreams, or will you recognize them as frequencies in the field, bonding you to realities you can't yet see? Because once you grasp that every thought is a thread tying you to a future, you stop treating them lightly. You start choosing them like you're choosing a destination. The riddle of quantum entanglement, then, isn't just a puzzle for scientists. It's a personal wake-up call, a reminder that you live inside a reality more fluid, more interconnected, and more responsive than you've been told. And from this moment forward, each thought is no longer just background noise. It's part of a quantum dialogue shaping the path you'll walk. And this is just the beginning. Beneath the surface of your daily awareness, something far more powerful is always broadcasting. It isn't the conscious thoughts you rehearse, the affirmations you try to repeat, or the fleeting worries that pass through your mind. It's the subconscious, the deeper program, the ancient circuitry running in the background. That's the true antenna. And whether you notice it or not, it's sending out a constant frequency into the field. Think of it like this. Your conscious mind is the DJ selecting a playlist, but your subconscious is the station itself. If the station isn't tuned, no matter how brilliant the track is, the song won't reach anyone. Static takes over. The subconscious carries your true signal, the beliefs etched in childhood, the emotional patterns you've rehearsed for years, the silent assumptions about what life allows you. These are the vibrations that shape the quality of the frequency you broadcast. Now picture yourself walking into a crowded room. You don't say a word, but people sense something about you instantly, a subtle energy. They might call it presence, vibe, aura. Science describes it as electromagnetic resonance. Spiritual traditions call it spirit or field. Whatever the label, it's the invisible transmission of your subconscious antenna, and it precedes every action you take. Here's the catch. Most people never change the station. Every morning, they wake up and replay the same stories about money, love, health, worthiness. Those loops keep the antenna broadcasting the same low signal, locking them into the same version of reality. This is why effort alone often fails. You can set goals, work harder, even change environments. But if the broadcast remains tuned to scarcity or fear, reality keeps reflecting scarcity and fear. The subconscious antenna doesn't just whisper, it amplifies. If you hold fear beneath the surface, you'll notice more reasons to be afraid. If you're secretly convinced you're unworthy, opportunities will seem invisible, even if they're right in front of you. The antenna doesn't only project, it also filters. It tunes your awareness toward evidence that matches its frequency, ignoring everything else. That's why two people can walk down the same street and see entirely different worlds. One notices threats, obstacles, closed doors. The other notices openings, allies, subtle invitations. Same environment, different antenna. But here's the empowering part. Antennas can be retuned. Frequency can be shifted. Just as a radio can move from static to clear music with a small turn of the dial, your subconscious can recalibrate. The difficulty is that most people try to adjust it consciously by thinking harder, pushing positive slogans, forcing hope. That rarely lasts. Real retuning requires emotion, repetition, and immersion. It's not about convincing yourself with words, it's about embodying a new signal until the subconscious accepts it as natural. Imagine your subconscious as a tuning fork. When struck, it vibrates at a certain pitch. Nearby objects begin to resonate at that same pitch, whether they intend to or not. Your subconscious works the same way. Once it's vibrating with confidence, gratitude, and self-trust, your outer reality begins to harmonize with those tones. People respond differently. Circumstances line up in surprising ways. What seemed impossible begins to unfold as if reality itself has shifted to your station. But the fork can't ring at two pitches at once. You can't vibrate with abundance while secretly rehearsing scarcity every morning. You can't magnetize love while silently expecting betrayal. The antenna only reflects the dominant frequency, and that dominance always belongs to the subconscious. That's why becoming conscious of what's running beneath the surface is the first act of true transformation. So ask yourself right now, what have you been broadcasting unconsciously? Not the stories you tell others, but the deep hum inside you. Do you feel a quiet faith that life is unfolding in your favor? Or do you carry a background static of doubt, resentment, or fear? That signal matters, because the quantum field is listening not to your surface wishes, but to your authentic vibration. And here's the revelation. Once you begin listening to your own antenna, you gain the power to rewrite it. Instead of autopilot programs running your life, you start choosing the frequency you want to emit. That choice is the hinge between repeating the same story and opening a new chapter. Every time you align emotion with intention, every time you embody gratitude before the proof, every time you breathe into possibility instead of panic, you're retuning the antenna. You're teaching your subconscious to sing a new song. And once the song becomes natural, reality itself begins to dance to its rhythm. The signal has always been there. Now it's your turn to decide whether it will keep broadcasting old limits or begin transmitting the vibration of your highest potential. You're not standing in just one story. Right now, countless versions of your life exist like unopened books on a shelf, each one waiting for your hand to pull it down. Some of those stories are filled with scarcity, setbacks, and endless loops of frustration. Others are radiant with breakthroughs, abundance, and fulfillment beyond what you've dared to imagine. And here's the astonishing truth. Your subconscious is already entangled with one of those futures, binding you to a storyline before you consciously choose it. Think of entanglement like invisible threads stretched between you and multiple timelines. Each belief, each emotional state, each assumption acts like a thread that ties you closer to one possibility. If you believe deep down that life is always a struggle, those threads pull you into a reality that confirms it. If you feel anchored in trust and expansion, those threads draw you toward a timeline where opportunities and solutions appear almost effortlessly. The choice isn't just about effort, it's about alignment. Picture walking down a hallway lined with doors. Behind each door is a version of your future self. One door reveals a self still chained to doubt, still repeating old patterns. Another reveals a self thriving, confident, overflowing with joy and purpose. You don't have to open every door, you only need to recognize which one your subconscious is already leaning against. Because whether you're aware of it or not, your daily emotions are choosing the doorknob you'll eventually turn. The power of entanglement lies in its neutrality. It doesn't punish, it doesn't reward, it simply connects. If your subconscious hums with scarcity, you'll feel drawn to situations that prove scarcity right. If your subconscious hums with abundance, you'll attract chances to confirm abundance. Like a magnet, you won't chase your field, will simply pull you where your energy already belongs. Here's the part most people miss. The subconscious doesn't care about your surface intentions. You can say, "I want success" all day long, but if beneath it you're rehearsing failure, your threads are tied to the future where success never arrives. That's why so many feel stuck. They're trying to walk toward one door while the threads are secretly binding them to another. But you're not trapped. Threads can be rewoven. Imagine holding scissors of awareness in your hand. Every time you choose to notice a limiting belief and question it, you snip a thread. Every time you cultivate a new emotional state, gratitude, faith, empowerment, you weave a new connection. The more often you repeat this, the stronger that new thread becomes, until suddenly the balance of entanglement tips and you find yourself drawn toward a brighter door. Consider it like tuning into parallel broadcasts. Several radio stations are playing at once, but you can't hear them all. Your subconscious is the dial deciding which station dominates your experience. If the dial is stuck on static, you'll think the whole spectrum is noise. But move it even slightly, and a clear melody emerges. That melody is your entangled future, aligning with you. This isn't just philosophy. It explains why small internal shifts often create disproportionate external results. Change the way you breathe in moments of stress, and suddenly people treat you differently. Release a belief about unworthiness, and opportunities appear that were invisible before. The outside didn't suddenly change. Your threads pulled you into a different version of reality that was always there, waiting. So ask yourself, which future are you entangled with right now? Is it the future where you keep repeating familiar struggles, or the one where you rise into possibilities you've barely touched? Your emotions will tell you. Fear signals you're entangled with timelines of limitation. Hope signals you're brushing against timelines of growth. Gratitude signals you're stepping closer to the version of you that already thrives. You're not powerless. Every breath, every choice of focus, every decision to embody a higher state of being strengthens the connection with a better story. And once enough threads tie you to that story, it becomes inevitable, not because you forced it, but because entanglement always pulls you where you're bonded. That's the revelation. Your future is not waiting for you to chase it, it's waiting for you to align with it. Reality doesn't just sit there, silent and unmoved. It shifts under the weight of your gaze. Quantum physicists discovered this in a laboratory, but you live it every single day. The double-slit experiment became legendary because it revealed something mind-bending. Particles behave like waves spreading, overlapping, existing in multiple states at once until they are observed. The instant attention is applied, the wave collapses, and one outcome becomes real. Observation alone changes the result. Now imagine what that means when you apply it to your own life. You're not a passive spectator, you're the observer whose focus collapses infinite possibilities into one lived path. When your mind lingers on fear, fear crystallizes. When your awareness rests on abundance, doors open toward it. Your attention is not neutral, it's the switch that turns potential into form. Think of possibilities like clouds drifting across the sky. There are countless shapes overhead, animals, faces, castles, storms. They all exist in potential, but the one you point to, the one you name, becomes the story you hold in memory. In the same way, your subconscious eye is always pointing, always choosing, whether you realize it or not, and the field responds, collapsing the chosen potential into a lived experience. Here's the challenge. Most people observe on autopilot. They focus without awareness. They dwell on what they fear might go wrong, and that focus acts as observation, pulling those possibilities closer. They replay mistakes and betrayals in their mind, unaware that every mental replay is a form of observing, reinforcing the thread that binds them to that reality. They don't realize the observer effect is working all the time, not just when they consciously decide. But here's the liberation. You can become an intentional observer. You can reclaim the power of focus and direct it toward futures worth collapsing into form. When you choose to linger on gratitude instead of resentment, you shift the probability field. When you picture yourself thriving instead of failing, you collapse that possibility into greater strength. Each moment of intentional observation is like planting a flag in the quantum landscape, saying, "This reality, not that one." Imagine holding a camera in your hands. The world is wide, filled with countless scenes, but the lens shows only what you focus on. Zoom in on shadows, and shadows dominate the frame. Pan toward the horizon at sunrise, and the light fills your viewfinder. The rest of the world doesn't disappear, it simply remains unobserved. Your life operates the same way. The focus of your awareness defines the photograph you end up carrying. Skeptics might argue, but isn't reality fixed whether I notice it or not? At the surface level, yes. Bills exist whether you look at them or not. But quantum physics points to a deeper layer, one where the act of attention truly shapes outcomes. Even neuroscience agrees. What you repeatedly focus on wires your brain to perceive more of it. Focus on problems, and the mind's filter highlights more obstacles. Focus on opportunities, and suddenly you notice connections and solutions that were invisible before. Observation doesn't just reflect it, reshapes. This is why practices like mindfulness, visualization, and meditation aren't just feel-good rituals. They're training grounds for your observer effect. Each time you hold a vision of the life you desire with emotional resonance, you're teaching your subconscious to collapse waves of possibility into outcomes aligned with that vision. It's not magic, it's mechanics, subtle but real. So here's the pivotal question. What are you observing most? The past you regret, the fears that haunt you, or the future you long for but rarely give full attention to? Because whichever receives the majority of your focus, is the one being reinforced by your subconscious gaze. Pause and imagine your life as a vast field of doorways again. Observation is the key that turns the handle. Stare long enough at a door of limitation, and eventually you walk through it. Hold your gaze on a door of expansion, and sooner than you think, you'll step into it. Your awareness doesn't just witness the hallway, it selects the path. The observer effect is no longer a scientific curiosity. It's the mirror showing you that your attention is sacred, that your focus carries weight, that every glance is a creative act. You can let the subconscious scatter it carelessly, or you can wield it like a sculptor's tool, shaping the future with precision. From this point forward, your choice is simple. Drift as an unconscious observer, or awaken as a deliberate one. Either way, the field responds. The question is, to what? Beneath the surface of your thoughts lies the real command center, the subconscious. It doesn't speak in words, but in patterns, emotions, and expectations. It doesn't negotiate, it repeats. And it doesn't forget, not until you teach it a new language. If the subconscious is the antenna broadcasting your reality, then reprogramming it is the act of changing the station so you stop living the rerun and start transmitting a new future. Picture your subconscious like an operating system running on old code. You can install apps, click buttons, and rearrange the desktop. But if the underlying system is outdated, everything slows, crashes, or misfires. Most people try to change their life by rearranging the desktop, new job, new partner, new goals, while the hidden operating system still runs on scarcity, self-doubt, and fear. No wonder their outer results keep snapping back like a rubber band. True transformation means going deeper, rewriting the code itself. How do you rewrite it? Not through force, but through repetition, emotion, and immersion. The subconscious doesn't respond to logic. It responds to lived experience, whether real or vividly imagined. That's why a nightmare can wake you in a sweat, even though it never happened. The subconscious can't tell the difference between memory and imagination. It only absorbs what feels real, which means you can deliberately feed it new memories until it begins to accept them as your baseline. Think of it as training a guard dog that's been taught to bark at everything. Right now, your subconscious may be lunging at opportunities, snarling at abundance, suspicious of love because its old training told it these things were dangerous. You don't punish the dog into calmness. You retrain it with patience, new experiences, and consistent signals. Over time, the dog learns. Safety doesn't come from guarding the past, it comes from trusting the new pattern. The same is true for your subconscious. One method is dismantling. Close your eyes and visualize the identity that has kept you stuck. The one that whispers, "I always fail. I'm not enough. Life never works for me." See that identity dissolve into light, breaking apart like old scaffolding falling away. The act of witnessing your old programming disintegrate begins loosening its grip. You're showing your subconscious that the story isn't permanent. It can be released. The second method is installation. Once you've cleared space, begin imagining your future self not as a fantasy, but as a memory you're revisiting. Feel the emotions of already being there. The peace of financial security, the warmth of genuine love, the strength of a healthy body. Don't just see it, embody it. The subconscious learns by immersion, not debate. The more real you make it feel, the faster the programming accepts it as truth. The third method is reinforcement. Daily rituals act as anchors that keep the new code running. Gratitude, journaling, breathwork, nightly visualization. These aren't cliches, they're tools for repetition. Each time you practice, you're firing the same neural pathways until they strengthen like well-worn trails. Eventually, the new patterns become the default road. Your subconscious travels without resistance. But here's the critical reminder. The subconscious doesn't change because you try harder. It changes because you create safety and consistency. If you push with force, it resists. If you guide with steady repetition and emotion, it adapts. That's why this process feels less like battling yourself and more like teaching a child, firm but compassionate, patient but consistent. Imagine standing in front of a mirror that reflects not who you are now, but who you could be. At first, the image feels foreign, but day by day, as you reinforce the picture, your subconscious begins to align your actions, your choices, your emotions with that reflection. And then one day, the reflection is no longer separate, it's you. That's the power of reprogramming. It collapses the gap between vision and identity until they are one. So as you move forward, remember this: your subconscious isn't your enemy. It's a loyal servant following outdated instructions. Once you rewrite the code, the servant becomes your greatest ally, broadcasting signals that pull you into realities you once thought were impossible. By now you've seen the pattern. Your subconscious broadcasts, your attention collapses possibility, and your entangled threads quietly pull you toward futures that match your inner state. But here's the practical question: how do you change the frequency? How do you move from static and repetition into resonance with the life you actually desire? That's where the frequency shift method comes in. First, understand this: change doesn't begin with massive external action. It begins with vibration. Imagine a tuning fork struck in a quiet room. Nearby instruments begin to resonate, humming in sympathy with its tone. You don't have to force the resonance, it happens automatically. Your subconscious works the same way. When you strike it with the right frequency, confidence, gratitude, love, your outer world begins to resonate with that tone, drawing matching experiences toward you. The key is to deliberately strike the fork, instead of letting old patterns keep it vibrating at fear or scarcity. Step 1 is breath. Breath is the simplest and most direct way to shift your state. Shallow, anxious breathing keeps the body tuned to survival frequencies. Deep, intentional breathing signals safety, presence, and openness. Each slow inhale draws in possibility. Each grounded exhale releases tension. With just 3 minutes of conscious breath, you can move from agitation to clarity, retuning the signal you're broadcasting without saying a word. Step 2 is visualization, but not the kind where you daydream half-heartedly about what you want someday. This is immersive rehearsal. Close your eyes and place yourself inside the scene of your desired future. Feel the air in that reality. Hear the sounds around you. Notice the weight of success in your body, the calmness of security in your chest, the lightness of joy in your voice. Don't imagine it as if you're watching a movie of yourself. Live it as though you're remembering. The subconscious doesn't distinguish between real memory and imagined experience. It only records what feels vivid, so give it something vivid to record. Step 3 is emotional anchoring. Emotion is the fuel that locks new frequencies in place. Gratitude, more than any other, acts like a magnet aligning you with abundance. When you cultivate gratitude before the external proof arrives, you're telling your subconscious, this state is safe, this state is natural, this state is real. And the more often you repeat it, the more your subconscious begins to seek evidence to match it. That's when synchronicities appear: chance encounters, opportunities, unexpected doors swinging open, not because luck changed, but because your frequency pulled you into alignment with those outcomes. Step 4 is embodiment. This is where most people stop short. They visualize, they feel, but then they return to daily habits that contradict the frequency. Embodiment means carrying the vibration into your choices. Ask yourself daily, what would the future version of me do right now? How would they speak, walk, spend, love, rest? Each time you mirror that version's choices, you reinforce the entanglement with that timeline. You stop waiting for proof and start living as if the proof has already arrived. Step 5 is release. You don't need to grip the outcome tightly. The field doesn't respond to desperation. It responds to coherence. Think of planting a seed. You water it, You tend the soil, but you don't dig it up every day to check if it's growing. You trust the process. The same applies here. Once you've shifted your state, release the need to control every detail. Walk with trust that the alignment is unfolding, even if you can't yet see how. The beauty of the frequency shift method is that it doesn't require years of struggle. It can be practiced in minutes. A breath cycle in the morning, a short visualization before bed, a conscious choice in the middle of your day to embody your future self. These are small acts, but they ripple across the field with disproportionate power. Because once your subconscious tunes to a new station, the universe doesn't need convincing, it responds. So the invitation is simple: practice. Not once, not occasionally, but consistently. Strike the tuning fork of your subconscious daily with breath, imagery, emotion, embodiment, and release. The more you do, the clearer your signal becomes. And as your frequency shifts, so does the reality you're entangled with. Most people try to change their lives by pushing harder, longer hours, stricter routines, endless self-improvement checklists. They believe transformation is earned through strain, as if life were a ladder that can only be climbed one painful rung at a time. But the quantum field doesn't bend to force, it bends to frequency. And frequency doesn't shift through effort alone, it shifts through embodiment. Here's the paradox. You don't attract what you chase, you attract what you embody. You don't manifest what you want, you manifest what you are. If at your core you identify as someone who struggles, you'll keep stumbling into struggle, no matter how many goals you set. If your subconscious sees you as undeserving, no amount of hustle will secure lasting abundance. The field doesn't respond to surface-level effort, it responds to the vibration of identity resonating beneath your actions. Think of it this way. Imagine two actors on a stage. One memorizes the lines perfectly but feels no connection to the role. The other steps into the character fully, moving, speaking, breathing, as though the role is their own life. Which one convinces the audience? Which one carries the weight of truth? Embodiment is the second actor. It makes the invisible believable. And the universe is your audience. It doesn't listen to empty words. It responds to embodied energy. When you embody your desired future, you stop waiting for permission. You begin acting, speaking, and feeling as though it's already part of your reality. That shift in being creates coherence between inner state and outer world. Suddenly, people respond to you differently. Opportunities align. You notice synchronicities that were invisible before. It isn't coincidence, it's resonance. You've become a vibrational match for what you desire. But embodiment isn't performance. It's not about faking until you make it, pretending you're rich while your heart still trembles in fear, or forcing a smile when doubt is eating you inside. That's surface acting, and the subconscious isn't fooled. Embodiment is deeper. It's about cultivating the emotional state that naturally belongs to the version of you who already lives that reality. It's about grounding into confidence rather than trying to wear it like a mask. Start small. Ask, how would my future self walk into this room? How would they breathe when facing stress? How would they speak to themselves in moments of uncertainty? Practice these shifts in the mundane moments. That's where embodiment is born, not in grand gestures, but in everyday choices that recalibrate your baseline state. Over time, those small adjustments accumulate until your subconscious no longer feels like you're trying. It feels like this is who you are. Here's the hidden gift. Embodiment dissolves resistance. When you're chasing a goal, every obstacle feels like proof you'll never get there. But when you embody the end state, obstacles become details, small adjustments on a path you already know belongs to you. That's why breakthroughs often feel sudden. They aren't the result of years of strain finally paying off. They're the natural reflection of a frequency you finally stabilized. Imagine a mirror. If you stand tense and contorted, the reflection shows tension. If you relax into a posture of calm strength, the mirror reflects calm strength. The mirror doesn't resist, it only imitates. Reality is the same. Once you embody the state of your future self, life reflects it back without argument. So the question becomes, who are you embodying today? Are you moving through the world as the outdated version bound by fear, or as the emerging self already entangled with abundance? Every thought, every gesture, every breath is a choice between the two. And the beauty of embodiment is that once you choose it consistently, effort fades. You no longer struggle to get there because, in essence, you're already there. The frequency is set, and reality has no choice but to tune itself to your song. When you shift frequency, the first proof doesn't always come as a dramatic breakthrough. More often, it arrives as whispers, small alignments, subtle signals, moments of uncanny timing that feel too precise to be chance. These are synchronicities, and they're the breadcrumbs the universe leaves to confirm you're in resonance with a new reality. Think of synchronicity as the field's way of speaking back. You broadcast a signal, and reality echoes it through events, encounters, or patterns. Maybe you're thinking of a solution to a problem, and someone casually mentions the exact answer. Maybe you set an intention for new opportunities, and the next day an email arrives with an unexpected invitation. Maybe you feel ready to release an old relationship, and within hours you hear a song that articulates your exact decision. These aren't random, they're reflections of your frequency, mirrored through the interconnected web of reality. Imagine tossing a stone into a lake. Ripples spread outward until they touch the far shore, bouncing back as new patterns. In the same way, your subconscious frequency sends ripples into the field. Synchronicities are the returning waves, proof that your signal reached further than you realized. When they appear, it's a reminder you are not isolated, you are entangled. Your inner state is already tugging on threads that extend far beyond your immediate circumstances. Most people dismiss synchronicities because they expect transformation to look loud, promotions, windfalls, miracles, but the subtle signs matter just as much. A repeated number, a stranger's kind word, an idea that keeps surfacing. These are like nudges, tiny course corrections guiding you deeper into alignment. The more you notice them, the more they multiply. Awareness feeds resonance, and resonance strengthens connection. Skeptics might call it coincidence, but pause and consider. Coincidence implies accident. Synchronicity implies alignment. When the same theme shows up 3 times in one day, or a door opens just as you gather the courage to knock, you're witnessing feedback from the field. Physics shows us particles communicate instantly across space. Why should it surprise us that your inner signals return through external patterns? Here's the key. Don't just notice synchronicities, interact with them. Treat them as invitations. If an unexpected opportunity appears, explore it. If a conversation stirs a forgotten passion, follow it. If you keep seeing symbols that remind you of your next step, take the step. Synchronicities aren't just pretty signs, they're threads pulling you toward your entangled future. To ignore them is to miss the very evidence you asked for. At the same time, avoid the trap of forcing meaning into everything. Not every song on the radio is a prophecy. Synchronicities stand out because they resonate, they feel charged, timely, uncanny. You know the difference between noise and signal because one brushes against your inner state like a key fitting a lock. Trust that intuition. It's part of the same feedback loop. When you live attuned to synchronicities, life stops feeling random. You begin to sense an intelligence woven into events, guiding you step by step. The field becomes less like a battlefield and more like a conversation. You broadcast frequency, the universe replies. You shift emotion, reality shifts texture. You take a step, doors creak open where walls once stood. Suddenly, what once felt impossible begins to unfold with a rhythm that feels orchestrated. So here's the practice. Become a witness. Keep a journal of synchronicities. Record the alignments that spark recognition, not to hoard them as trophies, but to train your awareness. The more you document, the clearer the pattern becomes. Life is responsive, not indifferent, And once you see that, your faith in the process deepens, doubt loses its grip, effort feels lighter, you move with more trust, because you've seen the evidence for yourself. Synchronicities and signals are not the destination, they are the breadcrumbs leading you there. Follow them, and you'll realize the universe has been in dialogue with you all along. The frequency shift didn't just change you, it changed the story unfolding around you. It's one thing to talk about frequency, embodiment, and entanglement as concepts, but the real proof is found in the echoes, those individuals who lived these truths long before the language of quantum physics made them sound scientific. Their lives became case studies, not because they memorized theories, but because they embodied states of being until reality bent to reflect them. Take the story of Jim Carrey, often retold but rarely understood in its depth. He didn't just scribble a check for $10 million and stash it in his wallet as a gimmick. He carried it as if it were already a fact, aligning his energy with the version of himself who had already arrived. He wasn't waiting for Hollywood to validate him. He was rehearsing the vibration of success until it became indistinguishable from memory. And years later, when the check was cashed in reality, it wasn't a miracle of luck. It was the field, reflecting the embodiment he had stabilized. Or consider Oprah Winfrey, who often shared that she lived in the energy of success long before the world recognized it. She didn't beg for proof, she became the proof. Her vibration of self-worth and vision magnetized opportunities that seemed unimaginable for someone from her background. She shifted her subconscious programming from limitation to expansion, and the universe answered with resonance. Her story isn't one of chasing, it's one of becoming. History is filled with similar echoes. Inventors like Nikola Tesla spoke of receiving ideas fully formed, as if transmitted from a higher frequency of thought. Athletes like Michael Jordan played with a presence so embodied that the outcome often seemed decided before the game began. He wasn't just practicing moves, he was living inside the identity of a champion until the world caught up with his internal frequency. These examples may seem larger than life, but they reveal something deeply human. Reality mirrors inner state. Even healing offers echoes. Medical literature records cases of spontaneous remission, moments when so-called incurable conditions vanished after patients underwent profound emotional or mental shifts. Doctors often scratch their heads, but from the lens of frequency, the explanation is clear. The subconscious antenna stopped broadcasting illness and began resonating with vitality. The body followed the signal. It wasn't magic, it was coherence. And these echoes don't belong only to celebrities or rare individuals. You've likely witnessed them yourself. A friend who finally stopped doubting and suddenly found love. A colleague who carried a quiet confidence and began attracting opportunities effortlessly. A relative who released bitterness and saw their health improve. These are not isolated accidents. They are entangled futures, revealing themselves once the internal state changed. What ties all these echoes together is the same pattern. They aligned inwardly before the outer world shifted. They embodied the energy of the outcome, trusted the resonance, and allowed reality to follow. They didn't wait for proof to feel worthy, safe, or abundant. They lived those feelings first. And the universe, bound by the laws of resonance, had no choice but to harmonize. So why do these stories matter? Because they erase the excuse of, it's just theory. They show you living mirrors, real human beings who demonstrated the power of entanglement and embodiment. They remind you that you're not experimenting with something abstract. You're stepping into a principle as old as creation itself. What you embody echoes outward. What you consistently vibrate becomes the path beneath your feet. The invitation is clear. Stop waiting for external confirmation. Become the echo now. Align your subconscious with the identity of the person you're becoming. Live as though the frequency is already yours. And when you do, you'll discover that the world has always been waiting to reflect your vibration. You stand at a threshold every day, though most people never notice it. A silent crossroads opens with each thought, each emotion, each choice of attention. On one path lies repetition, the familiar loops of fear, scarcity, and doubt. On the other lies transformation, the uncharted terrain where abundance, clarity, and alignment flow more freely than you've ever allowed. And the deciding factor isn't fate or luck, it's resonance. Which frequency will you embody? Which version of your future will you collapse into form? Imagine standing in a hall of mirrors. Each mirror reflects a different possible self. One shows the tired, discouraged version of you who never escapes old programming. Another shows a self already thriving, confident, grounded, magnetic. A third reveals an authentic, unshakable you, living with integrity and joy. The mirrors don't force themselves on you. They simply exist, waiting. Your gaze, your attention, your subconscious state is the choice that determines which reflection solidifies into your reality. This is the power and the weight of the crossroads. Too often, people unconsciously choose the same mirror day after day, not realizing they're free to turn their head, to observe a new image, to embody a different truth. They wake up rehearsing yesterday's emotions, feeding yesterday's identity, entangling themselves with the same story. And so the cycle continues, not because the universe is cruel, but because their subconscious keeps voting for repetition. But you are not bound to repeat. You can pivot at any moment. The act of choosing a new future begins the instant you align with a different vibration. It doesn't require perfection. It requires awareness. Awareness of the thought you're feeding, awareness of the emotion you're cultivating, awareness of the signal your subconscious is broadcasting. Once you notice the crossroads, you can decide, will I reinforce the old path, or will I step into resonance with the new? Think of a river fork. One branch winds endlessly in circles, depositing you back where you started. The other flows forward into wider waters, carrying you toward horizons you've never seen. At first, the choice feels subtle, a small turn of the rudder. But over time, that small shift changes your entire destination. That's how the crossroads of thought and frequency work. They may feel insignificant in the moment, but repeated daily, they redirect the entire current of your life. Here's the truth most overlook. Choosing the higher path isn't about force, it's about coherence. You don't need to wage war with old beliefs or scream affirmations until your throat is raw. You simply need to embody the state of the future you choose, consistently enough that the subconscious accepts it as normal. Once it does, the entangled threads pull you forward and momentum takes over. The crossroads becomes less about struggle and more about surrender, allowing yourself to flow with the resonance you've already chosen. So where are you now? Which path has your subconscious been voting for? You can feel it in your body. Tightness, anxiety, and doubt point to entanglement with scarcity. Calm, expansion, and gratitude signal alignment with abundance. The signals are there if you listen, and every moment offers the chance to pivot. Every breath is an opportunity to shift vibration. Every choice of attention is a vote for your future. This is the heart of the journey, not waiting for a miracle, but realizing you are the miracle. The crossroads doesn't appear once in a lifetime. It appears in every moment you live. And each time you choose alignment over fear, embodiment over effort, gratitude over resentment, you strengthen the threads pulling you toward your highest reality. You are already entangled with multiple futures. The question is not whether they exist. The question is which one you will claim. At the crossroads, the decision is yours, and once you choose with intention, the universe rushes to meet you, because resonance is law.